Yo, what's up guys? Josh, Magikarp Poker here, back with another video. As you guys saw, yesterday was absolutely brutal. I should have just went home after the Resorts World session of Degeneracy. There was no way it was gonna end well after I was doing 2 hours of Bomb Pot, sitting down at a 1-3 game with a bunch of old man coffees, as well as a few loose aggressive players. So yeah, basically played really bad at the Orleans. Just did not play well. It's not even running bad, I just played poorly. So looking to, play well today at the win. We're here in the self-parking garage, ready to get a session in. I think for me, I gotta remember, I have to treat poker as a job, right? I think lately in the past 4 sessions, I've been getting too loose ever since that 11-hour session where I had the big win. So I'm gonna start just playing tight, playing right, playing aggressive. Honestly, it all starts from my pre-flop range, and I feel like yesterday I could have avoided a lot of these bad situations I got myself in at the Orleans if I folded 3 bets or just folded to big raises before the flop. So today, I'm just focusing on coming out break even.
In the first notable hand of the session, we're under the gun with King Queen offsuit, so we bump it up to $15. The small blind folds, but the big blind makes the call. The flop comes 10 Queen 10 rainbow. The big blind checks to us. We c-bet for $15. The big blind now check raises to $45, and with 2 pair, we go ahead and make the call. Although he probably has a 10, we want to see if the turn brings any potential draws, since if a jack comes, then we improve to an open-ended straight draw. The turn is an 8 of clubs, which doesn't really change much. However, the action goes check check. The river is a miracle queen, so now we have a boat, beating any 10 he previously had. The big blind now bets into me for $60. With top boat, I go ahead and raise to $160, and then he makes the fold, seeming pretty pissed off. Shortly after this hand, this opponent seat changes from my right to across the table, probably because he was slightly tilted from getting outdrawn, assuming that he had a 10. In the next notable hand, around an hour later, I look down at ace-3 suited in the cutoff, so when there's one limper ahead of me in the low jack, I go ahead and limp as well. The button and small blind both limp, and then the big blind bumps it up to $15. All of us who limped come along. So now we're going 5 ways to a flop of ace-10-9 rainbow, so we have a top pair, but the board is not great for our range. With ace-3 suited, we're mainly looking for a lower board or a club draw, so the action checks around. The turn is now a jack of hearts, so pretty much king-queen is the nuts, and it also brings a heart draw on board. So the action checks over to the button, who bets $20. The small blind, big blind, and low jack all make the call, and I actually make a pretty nitty fold. I fold top pair. My rationale in the moment was that I was probably not beating much. Like, I feel like a pair of aces is just a bluff catcher on such a wet board. So I go ahead and get out of the way, and then the river comes a 5 of spades, and the small blind and big blind check. The low jack now bets $20, and everyone else folds. So one thing to note here is this particular session, probably because I'm coming off of the Orleans loss, I was playing really disciplined, super tight. If anything, I was overly nitty, but I just feel like after losing a big session, I try to err on the tighter side just to try to lock up a win and play profitable poker. I know that I'm probably losing value in some spots, but if I'm gonna err on a side of being tighter versus like looser, I think being tighter is better in a full ring game. So around 20 minutes later, the next notable hand happens where the under the gun opens for $10, which is a pretty small sizing in the win 1-3 game. I look down at queen jack suited, so I make the call. The small blind folds, but the big blind comes along. The flop comes 8-7 queen with 2 diamonds. So when the action checks over to me, I go ahead and bet $15 with my top pair. The big blind calls, but the original raiser under the gun makes the fold. The turn is a jack of diamonds, which completes the front door flush draw, but also gives us top 2 pair. So when the big blind checks to us, we bet $25, and that seems like too much as he gets out of the way. So this hand was pretty straightforward. I felt like, honestly, this session I was just playing really well in the sense that it was like just steady, taking down small pots here and there, like making tight folds, and not really making any bad decisions. In this hand, the under the gun and middle position limp. I look down at king 10 offsuit in the cutoff, and I go ahead and limp as well. The button comes along with a limp, and then the small blind bumps it up to $21, who was the same gentleman from the very first hand who supposedly had trips, but didn't show his hand, and he seat changed across the table to get away from me, or maybe just to change positions to switch the cards up. I noticed some people like to seat change if, let's say, there's a player who is running really hot. Some players like to seat change to get their seat because they believe in that luck factor. Honestly, I don't really seat change that often. The only time I really seat change is to seat change into seat 1, but aside from that, I don't really move around too much. I know there are players that are like predators who seat change right behind someone they think is a fish and then just 3-bet the shit out of them and play super aggressive, but yeah, I'm not one of those players. And yeah, Basically, after that guy bumps out $21, the big blind and under the gun get out of the way. However, the middle position, me, and the button all come along. 4 ways to a flop of 4 king 10 with 2 clubs. So the small blind bets $100 with only $136 behind. This is a pretty big bet. It's a slightly over pot size bet. So when the middle position folds, I just go ahead and make the call here with top 2 pair, and the button also gets out of the way. The turn is a 9 of hearts, and now the small blind jams for his remaining $136. And I go ahead and just snap call here with top 2. The river is a jack of hearts, and he shows ace 10 offsuit, so he had middle pair on the flop and then just shipped it. And yeah, we take this one down, beating the same guy, and he left after this hand, seemed not too happy. So in this case, it looks like his seat change away from me kind of ended up costing him, since we took him down again in his new position. All right, so the next notable hand happens around 2 hours later. We're in the small blind when we have a bunch of limpers, under the gun, middle position, hijack, cutoff button. So 5 limpers to us, and we look down at king queen suited. So we bump it up to $25, and all the limpers except for the cutoff get out of the way. Going heads up to the flop of ace 7 jack rainbow. So we only really have a gut shot, and the action goes check check. The turn is ace of clubs, and now the cutoff ships it for $49. And I go ahead and make the call with the nut flush draw as well as a pair draw, I guess, if he doesn't have an ace. I will say this one opponent was definitely super tilted because he ran into like 2 monsters. I forgot exactly what his hands were, but he lost 2 big pots before this, and he was playing like almost every hand. So this guy was definitely like on the tilted end. The river's a queen of hearts, and we show our hand first, which we should let him show first to see what he shoved with. But I just figured since this guy's super tilted, and I thought the queen was good, I just table my hand and we take it down. I think in poker sometimes, it's like playing the game then trying to be nice, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that whenever someone shoves, you just want them to show first because you want to gain information as well as that's just like the rule of the game, right? It's kind of like one of those things when it's super friendly and people like take down a pot before showdown, then always show their hand. Like there's no benefit in doing that since at the end of the day, you're playing for real money and the objective of the game is to win other people's money. So you want to minimize the information you give them. And yeah, this was another pretty straightforward hand. Honestly, this session is kind of boring. There's nothing too interesting that happens. Just straightforward hand after straightforward hand, which leads us to this final straightforward hand of the night. So around 6 minutes later, the under the gun opens, but only to $7, which I guess maybe is GTO sizing. But I don't know. Super small raise, low jack calls. I look down at king jack suited from the hijack, so I make the call. The cutoff comes along and both blinds get out of the way. Flop comes 10-5 jack with 1 spade, so we have top pair and a backdoor spade draw. So the action checks over to the low jack, who now bets $17. So we make the call with our pair and backdoor flush and straight draw, and everyone else gets out of the way. The turn is a 3 of hearts, and now the low jack slows down and checks. I go ahead and bet $25 since I think I'm ahead, and then the low jack folds. As I mentioned, this session is honestly pretty boring. However, I feel like the truth is profitable poker is boring. You just end up folding the majority of the time if you're playing tighter pre-flop ranges. And as a result of folding more often, you end up getting in like less difficult decisions. I feel like the more hands you play, the more you open yourself up to difficult decision nodes or tricky spots, and that's exactly why playing a loose aggressive style is difficult. I've heard that if you want to become a really good loose aggressive player, you first need to master the tight aggressive play style. People who play a lot of hands need to know where they're at all times and just have a good, read on the situation. So yeah, I feel like for someone like me who's just trying to become a profitable player, it's better just to stick with the tag style. And then if I'm short-handed, I can loosen up my range, obviously. Or if I'm playing against people I think I have an edge against, I can loosen up my range. But in general, especially in the full ring games, which is what my coach Arrow specializes in, it's just better to play tighter and just aggressive. And more importantly, avoiding coin flip situations.
Wrapped up the session. So just wrapped up my session. We got a W. We got a win at the win. All right, I'm gonna stop saying that joke, but yeah, super happy with how I played. Honestly, I was like pretty card dead for the first hour and a half. I actually felt like it was pretty boring. I feel like profitable poker is boring poker at 1-3. But as you guys saw, it all changed when that guy went ham with the middle pair when he had ace 10, and then I had top 2, and then another guy shoved when I had a straight flush draw and I got there with the queen on the river. So yeah, guys, I feel like I'm actually really happy with how I played, just because I didn't really feel like I was like being degen or gambly at all. I played really tight. There was like that moment where I folded Jack 9 suited and it like flopped face up. It like, when I was mucking it, it went face up, and then there's like a gasp like, what? The funny thing is the very next orbit I actually opened Jack 9 suited. So I think something I learned from Aero Poker is like you never want to be too predictable with how you play, just like mixing things up, balancing your range. But yeah, I think the reason I played it the second time was it was more short-handed, I believe. But overall, just a great session. Much needed for my confidence. I think one thing I realized is if I don't shuffle my chips, I actually play a lot tighter and like less degen. And the more I shuffle my chips and touch them, I play way looser and way more gambly. And I don't know if that's just like a psychological thing, just because I used to be like a degen gambler. So I feel like perhaps when I touch the chips, I'm just like behaviorally conditioned to think like, oh, gamble. I also didn't bring out the Magikarp this time. I wanted to see if the Magikarp is plus EV. I feel like by having the Magikarp, I become friendlier at the table. And for me, when I'm trying to play profitable poker, I play extremely tight, and I don't really talk to people at the table. So it's actually better if I'm not like friends with people at the table when I'm actually trying to, you know, make money playing poker. So yeah, I mean, overall, just very happy with how I played. Basically, I was in for 500, out for 903 for a profit of $403 in around 4 hours. It was actually 4 hours and 3 minutes. So yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better session to bounce back from the Orleans punt. And I think for me, right, I'm going to just try to limit my play to 4 hours, maybe 6 hours max, but definitely no more than that, just because I get tired. When I get tired, I'm not emotionally as there, right? It's easy to get tilted, and I just play worse when I play too long. And then I'm also never going to straddle again. So I think straddling for me just unlocks the degen. So there's like a negative EV play, and also going to avoid bomb pots. So yeah, guys, we're, you know, going to start up the win streak again. Win number 1 today. Hopefully we can get that to win number 2 tomorrow when we play, and just keep it going from there. And if you guys like the content, please make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.